Hi everyone, and welcome to my Wednesday's 6 p.m. talk here, 6 p.m. here in Bali. So wherever you are, hope everybody's doing well. So I actually just got a new device that actually allows me to stand up, which is really cool. So hopefully that will give me more opportunities to either choose to stand up during the talks or to sit down. So just to very quickly to introduce what these talks are about. Obviously, I'm doing them every Wednesday. It's been a short while, and the intention is to talk about mental health to help in the process of destigmatizing what happens to us all, meaning that we're all exposed to a world, we're all exposed to life and relationships and different things, and it's important to be able to speak and to share what's happening. It's a little bit like, if I have a toothache, then what I do is I go to the dentist and the dentist helps me out. So, the field of mental health, we don't have to have stigma around it. We don't have to have shame or feelings of guilt, about it. It's okay to talk. It's actually the best thing that we can do. So these talks are about sharing insights and information on different conditions, how we're affected by these different conditions, how we can improve our lives to better ourselves in many respects, and more importantly, to destigmatize mental health in its various forms. So every time I have a different discussion, sometimes with colleagues and guests from different parts of the world, and sometimes I just have these talks by myself. Today I thought it would be a nice opportunity to just have an exchange, perhaps an interaction with you, and to make this live. That means if you have any questions related to the topics perhaps of relationship issues or anxieties or defense mechanisms, this is maybe a good opportunity for us to share, because it's nice to be able to communicate with other people, right? So everything I'll be sharing with you are based on my clinical experience in the last 20 years. This doesn't replace a personalized approach, something specific to your needs. So it may be in your best interest if you're really struggling to actually seek the help or to consult with someone in your country, in your area. And so again, it's just based on my own clinical impressions and opinions over the years. So this is that. So again, let's begin. If there's any questions to start, I'll be really happy to talk about what it is that you have in mind. Hi there. Hope everybody's well again, and hello. Hi. So. Again, the topic of relationships is a topic that involves all of us, and there's obviously a lot of aspects to it. So question here, so how do defense mechanisms become a problem? That's a great question. What is a defense mechanism? So we'll go with the questions one by one. So defense mechanisms in psychology are behaviors that we use whenever we are experiencing something that's unpleasant to us. So it's something that we use as a survival mechanism. For example, whenever we are exposed to something that's threatening, that we're going to maybe want to suppress it, maybe to deny it. We might not want to confront it, so we might move away from a situation. We might not, talk to someone about it. We might maybe even not talk, and then it can manifest maybe by falling sick, or it might express itself in a problem in communication. It might affect your life in various ways. So you could actually develop an anxiety disorder, for example, or you might become very nervous without actually having a disorder or a condition, without using the word disorder in that sense, without pathologizing what's going on. But it's meant to be there as a response to survival. So there's a positiveness behind a defense mechanism. Some defenses might be adaptive and appropriate to some situations, but in other situations it might not be adaptive and may cause more harm than good. So that's the case when it becomes a problem, and that's when we want to talk to somebody about it, because sometimes it can be very quickly resolved obviously, so that we can learn to better address, better recognize, and better communicate what we're maybe upset by, or what we are scared by, or what might be bothering us in different ways. And defense mechanisms usually can begin very early in life. I mean, usually they do. It's our survival mechanism. It's instinctive. So it's something that begins from the moment that we're born. And then as we grow older, it becomes a little bit more complex in its variations. So another question. Hello. Hi, thank you for your questions. How do I handle my anxiety attacks? So, well, that's a good question. Anxiety. Then anxiety is an experience, an emotion that we all have to various degrees. Sometimes, some of us, we might begin to experience such an irrational, such an intense, overwhelming sensation that seemingly paralyzes us. It's paralyzed us. We begin to lose our capacity to breathe. We begin to hyperventilate. Maybe our heart begins to beat very, very fast. We might have very, very dark thoughts, perhaps even dark thoughts that we might not survive. We might feel dizzy. So a panic attack can be very, very powerful and very disconcerting, obviously, when we experience it. And it's really important to know that something like that is experienced for many people will experience anxiety at some point in their lifetime. So it's something that is not that is not estranged in that sense. So knowing about anxiety is the first step to knowing how to handle it. Meaning understanding that anxiety is first of all a response to a perceived threat. That means it might not necessarily be a real threat, something that is actually happening in front of you, but something that you perceive because that's something that you're imagining. Maybe you're imagining that because of some particular reason, maybe something that happened to you before in the past that explains the reason why you're actually having this intense reaction in this moment. So apart from psychotherapy, which is a very useful way to learn to understand anxiety and to be able to manage it, here we're specifically referring to one type of psychotherapy that can be very effective. Of course, there are many different types, but one of them is called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is an opportunity to assess your thoughts and to understand the connection between your thoughts, your emotions, your behavior, and your physical symptoms, how there's an interplay, an interconnection between all of these different aspects of ourselves. And usually results through CBT, also known as CBT, can be very useful. It doesn't necessarily have to take a long time. And of course, CBT is not the only method. There's many other very useful methods to help treat anxiety attacks. You can also have different forms of emotional regulation, which is a term used to talk about different breathing exercises, how to regulate and calm your emotion down. So then there's many ways of being able to do that. You also have mindfulness practices. So this might include things like learning how to ground yourself through the breath. Perhaps learning how to ground yourself by using different sensory experiences. An example of that can be an exercise we call the 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Or if I do it with my hand, we say 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So basically, what this exercise suggests, which is actually a really powerful, quite easy exercise to do that gives you like an immediate, instant benefit, is to focus, for example, on identify five things, objects that you can see around you, and spend your time, a few moments. You can even decide to spend like a minute if you like, or less, more or less, and just to focus on that object for a while. Maybe you notice the shape, you notice the texture, you notice the lighting, maybe you notice something about that object for a little while, so you're completely immersed visually by that object before you move to another object. And then you do the same thing with another object. And then once you've done this with 5 objects that you can see, then you can move to the next one, which the next sense, which is about the sense of hearing. So what you have to do is you've got to identify 4 things that you can hear around you and to stick with it for a little while. I mean, there's a little process to it that's really, really helpful. And you do this with four objects. It could be the sound of, maybe if you have an air conditioning on, maybe it's the sound of the AC, or it may be the sound of a clock, or it may be the sound of birds if they're chirping outside. It might be the sound of people passing by. And all you're doing is completely immersed, like completely focused on the sound, like the volume, the tone, the vibrations of the sound, totally immersing yourself in that sense. And then afterwards, you move to the third one. So the third can be tactile. So you begin perhaps to sense, for example, to become very aware of the sensation of your shirt, let's say, on your skin. Perhaps it can also be the sensation of your fingers around your hand if it's like this. Then it can be maybe the sensation of the floor under your feet if you're standing. And you just stay with it for a little while. You know, it's again very, very grounding, very powerful to do. The fourth sense is that of taste. So you can just experience, actually before taste you can use smell. So you can just identify two things that you can smell. Again, it can be perhaps, it might be your perfume, it might be the smell of the air in the space that you are in. Even no particular smell is also a smell in itself, and you can just have your mind completely immersed by that. And then lastly is one, which we're coming back to the taste. And the taste is just becoming aware for a moment or two of the taste in your mouth. Again, there might be a taste of something that you had a few minutes before. It might be the taste of just the taste in your mouth, the natural taste that's there, just becoming totally mindful of it. So this is a great grounding exercise called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And of course you have many other things, mindfulness. I also happen to have, so there are guided meditations that can also be helpful to calm a person down. And I actually have a few that are recorded and already available online on my YouTube channel and on my website as well. So they can actually be really helpful if you want. They're general, but a lot of people actually enjoy it. So that's how to handle your anxiety attacks. Okay, so I said a few things there. Obviously, I could talk a lot more. So you have more specific questions, you can also ask me. So can you have constant anxiety and not aware of it? In a sense, in a way, the anxiety might be an underlying experience. It might not necessarily be visible, especially if it's something that you've been having for many years and it's become adaptive. The word adaptive means that it's become normalized. So you no longer differentiate between what is being relaxed and what is being stressed. So you become so accustomed and used to that threshold that you don't particularly notice that you're tense perhaps all the time. But usually an anxiety will be something that will be a little bit more visible because it's going to interfere with your life. So usually it's going to be manifested in one way or another. So that's that. So usually if you're an anxious type person but not aware of it, well, it's going to affect your life in one way or another. So in the end, you probably might do with speaking with someone about this the moment that you discover it. Any other questions you have? Is it still an issue if you don't want to have a relationship or get attached? So now we're talking about relationships. Well, there are, in many cultures and societies, preference for staying, let's say, single is out of the norm. It means that usually in many cultures and traditions, we always think about, we need to be in a relationship at some point in our life. So this is kind of a modern modern idea or modern phenomenon that many people in the world might actually find themselves in without actually not being in a relationship, and actually being fully content with not being in a relationship, and that's totally fine. You know, we are so different that it's very much based on subjective experience. But I would actually answer this in two parts. So on the one hand, of course, we are influenced by our background, we're influenced by our culture, and by what we have experienced in our life, and that's going to shape perhaps the direction that we're going to take. And sometimes, if wanting not to be in a relationship happens to be a choice in which I feel serene and happy with myself, to not necessarily want to be with anybody because I like my alone time and I'm happy with that, then that is totally okay. It's totally fine to do that, even though we might be affected by other people's around us, maybe family, depending on the culture that we're in. They might be asking, why aren't you in a steady relationship or a serious relationship? So that can actually cause a lot of pressure and tension. And of course, it's understandable for our family to want this to happen for their children, if that's what they've been used to. Now, if a person is choosing not to be in a relationship, and the reason for that is not necessarily because they're not because they're happy not being in a relationship, but because they're afraid of being in a relationship, then we're talking about something else. Because in that case, it becomes more of an avoidance. It becomes, like we were talking about defense mechanism earlier, it becomes a way of defending myself against an unpleasantness that I might have experienced before. And of course, there's many other layers around that. So it might be because of, there might be an insecurity behind trust. Maybe I experienced a relationship that was very traumatic before, or maybe and it was very difficult for me to get myself out of that relationship. So now I don't want to be in a relationship anymore because I want to protect myself from that. Other people might struggle with codependency. That means they might become very attached to another person, and that might be as a result of a certain attachment style that they have. So in one of the previous talks, I was talking about attachment style on one of the previous Wednesdays. And attachment style is really interesting because it really highlights more about the foundations of the way we perceive ourselves and the world around us. And this is something that starts very early on in our life. It starts with our parents and the type of security, the type of affection and nurturing and that we've had or we've received when we were born and when we were kids, and that can shape the type of attachment that we will begin to feel. That means how we feel about ourselves and about the world and other people. And usually there are two types of attachments. One, we call it the secure attachment, where that means, it doesn't mean that we don't get upset or we don't get maybe anxious at times, but it just means that we are able to deal with the unpredictabilities of our emotions and relationships in a more adaptive way, because there's a level of sense of inner security in our being that was established as a result of our upbringing in some respect. The other type is called insecure attachment style, and this can be divided into several parts. One can be an avoidant type, another can be an anxious type, and another can be a combination of avoidant and anxious type. And again, these are another form of defense mechanism that can actually be there and therefore affect and influence the type of relationships that we have later on. So I guess my question is very broad in that respect, because I wanted to really clarify these 2 points. The fact that one, for some people, not wanting to be in a relationship is a choice in which they're very happy and serene, and that's a choice of life, how they want to actually live, and it's totally okay. Or another type in which I don't want to have a relationship simply because I'm afraid and I'm protecting myself. And that's something, if that's the case, it would be good to actually discuss this with a trained psychologist, psychotherapist, who will really help you to delve and explore a little bit more deeply into what's going on. Again, a psychologist is trained in such a way that they understand behaviors. They've done studies to understand multiple type of theories behind the reason why we think the way we do, why we behave the way we do. I mean, it's a complex, being human is complex, but fascinating at the same time. So a psychologist is trained to be able to help perceive perhaps the details that when we're not trained, it's difficult for us to see for ourselves. So sometimes very few sessions can help to change the whole course and direction of our life as we learn to get to know ourselves better. And for some people, it's a journey. Therapy is a process. And it's not a quick fix. It's not after 2 sessions, after 4 sessions, I'm done. Okay, it's more of a journey, and there are many layers that you can go through that can be very helpful and of course transformative, because it helps you to grow as an individual and to live a more fuller life in the end from within. So that's really important, to learn how to love oneself in order to be able to love others. Okay, this is really important. A lot of us, we might not necessarily love ourselves. Maybe we feel very insecure, and therefore we always need the attachment of somebody else to feel validated or feel safe and deserving within ourselves. So it's really a process for us to learn, to discover if this is not something that we are familiar with this notion of loving oneself. Really is the key aspect of being able to grow in a more holistic way, and to be able to be with others in a more harmonious way too. You're very welcome for a detailed answer. I mean, I guess every subject, every question will lead us to more layers. And it's nice to be talking about all of this. So another question: how do I cope with the jealousy in my relationship? So very good question. So jealousy is a complex emotion. It's also if we explore it a little bit further, it's a form of fear. There's an insecurity. So I feel threatened, and perhaps I need a certain validation. And so jealousy is usually coming from a place of fear. And so being able to explore what that fear is, why it is there within oneself, will then allow you to better understand yourself. And therefore, after that, you will be able to decide whether or not that's how you want to be continuing to feel in the relationship that you have. Now, some degree of jealousy in a relationship is also kind of a sign of in a way of care. That means you really love the person that you're with, and you're afraid that the person might go away. So there's a degree of it that can be understandable, but there's also another degree of it that can actually be that can affect our functioning, and obviously to be to such an extent that it destabilizes the whole relationship and becomes a bit over. The person who's jealous might begin to feel be perceived or experienced by the other partner, let's say, as being very maybe too much overbearing or too emotionally needy, and again, that's usually something that would be a good indication to actually speak with a professional to work through their insecurities. Okay, so jealousy is just one of the various emotions that we all experience. And the world of emotions is a fascinating one. I don't know how many of you have really kind of taken a step back to really give yourself the chance to reflect on what emotions are. But I'd like to use this analogy. If we think about it just for a moment, if you're thinking like if you drive a car and you're in the driver's seat and you've got in front of you the dashboard, and In front of the dashboard, you've got all these light indicators in front of you. So you've got the petrol light, the oil light, you've got, the mileage that's there, the temperature. You've got all these, really interesting indicators. And these are really important, right? I mean, they're important because they allow you to have the information that you need to know what to do. Let's say the petrol light switches on, you say, okay, thank you for switching on, because this way I know what I'm supposed to do. So it's a kind of what we call a call for action. I can go and I can do something about it. In this case, I would go and put petrol, and then everything will be fine. So similarly, we're built as humans with an incredible brain that allows us to experience senses and to experience the world that we are in the way that we do. And our emotions can be looked at similarly to the dashboard and indicators in a car as that of a navigating system. It's simply telling us, if we're driving in the right direction or not. And it's basically what we call a call for action. Let's say if I'm feeling scared, so it's telling me you need to pay attention to this, what's going on. If I'm feeling sad, okay, again, it's telling me, okay, what's going on here? I need to pay attention to this. A lot of us are not trained in what we call emotional intelligence. Because a lot of us maybe in school or when we were brought up or so on, we weren't, we didn't talk about this. Maybe talking about emotions was maybe a sign of weakness or something like that. So nobody wanted to talk. Maybe our parents never talked about something like that. So again, times are very different, but emotions are incredible because it makes us who we are. And as we learn more about them, then we can begin to use them as navigating devices to be able to then better ourselves. Not to say that there are negative emotions or like bad emotions. Okay, so, and I don't like using the word negative emotions in that sense, or positive emotions. I prefer to use like pleasant or unpleasant. So, because all emotions are useful, they're all informative. They're giving me a direction. So either they're telling me, okay, this is great an experience that's happening right now, so I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling thrilled, or I'm experiencing an unpleasant emotion that's also telling me, well, maybe in this particular situation, it's understandable to be feeling sad right now. Okay, maybe I've lost someone, or and so it's okay to be experiencing that. But sometimes I might be feeling sad without any particular reason. And if I'm feeling sad for no particular reason, then that could be an indication of something else. And then that's when we gradually go into more complex conditions. Maybe we can talk about, people are struggling with depression. There are many reasons for why we might become depressed. And therefore that's why we want to be exploring all of these things. So we want to be in tune and in touch with our emotions. So there's lots of books out there. Any book that's out there like on emotional intelligence, to learn more about your emotions, is the best thing that you can do for yourselves, to reconnect with you, get to know your emotions, as opposed to freeze away from them or push them away or say, these negative emotions, I don't like it. Of course, nobody likes negative emotions, but they're all useful. I mean, nobody likes to have the petrol light in our car switch on. Yeah, nobody likes to have our oil light switch on in a car. However, it's useful because if there weren't these lights, then I wouldn't know and the car would break down. So they're all useful. They allow me to be able to understand myself better, to be able to understand where I'm from, because we all come from, the same place. We're all born, we're all infants, okay? We're all children. And yes, thank you for sharing. Inner child, yes, we all have our inner child, and this is the first part of ourself that is presented to the world. That's how we see the world, through our inner child self. And then as we grow older, then we begin to enter into an adult realm that, depending on how our inner child self has experienced the world, if it was difficult or not difficult, that's going to influence the type of relationship I'll have with my more adult self later on. And sometimes there can be a lot of clash between the two. And of course, I'm not aware of all this, and that's why we see a therapist, a psychologist, who can understand, shed some light, help to facilitate, to give you information so that you can make better use of what's going on in your life. So I usually like to keep my talks within a time frame of half an hour. So I guess we covered quite a few things today. Thank you for your questions. Again, these talks are always a great opportunity to exchange new ideas and to share with you information that I hope you'll find useful. However, they don't, again, I repeat this, these are based on my own clinical opinions over the years, and it might not be reflective of what you particularly need. So if you're lost, confused, you're not sure about something, seek somebody's professional opinion in your area. I mean, you can always message me, and I can always give you my impression as well, and then refer you to the right person. So again, so yesterday I also wanted to mention that yesterday I had there was a great pre-conference for the Middle East Eating Disorder Association, which I preside over, which is a non-profit organization who's been founded since 2009, and whose purpose has been to raise awareness, to talk about prevention, to encourage research, to train professionals in the Middle East for anybody who's suffering from eating disorders or even with their families. And we had a great pre-conference yesterday. Now, MIDA is also a chapter of the Academy for Eating Disorders, which is an organization all around the world that helps to connect all different professionals around the world. So just very quickly, we have, MIDA has a special podcast that you can follow, MIDA Association podcast. You can actually, I'll be putting a link on this so that you can actually follow if that's of interest to you. And we also have a MIDA YouTube channel in which there are various relatively short presentations for parents, for teachers, or for even healthcare professionals who would like to find out more about what eating disorders are, and it's all free online for you. Okay, so that's it for today. I'll see you all again next Wednesday. I'll probably have a guest with me next Wednesday on another talk. We'll keep that as a surprise until next week. Be safe, everybody. Okay, take care. Bye for now.